Hey everybody, welcome back to part 4 of my series about how I lost 100 pounds. I just want to come out swinging on this one, just in case you've been skipping the intro. It's okay, I would too, those are boring. But content warning, trigger warning. We are going to be talking a lot about disordered eating. We are going to be talking a lot about binging and recovery and the challenges of being a neurodivergent person with sensory issues and like food aversions and eating disorder recovery, and how oftentimes they are very at odds. So just know this is going to be a very candid conversation. So if you are not in a place to consume this media right now, that is totally fine. Be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself, come back when you're ready. The other thing is that this essay ends with a bunch of resources, a bunch of questions, kind of a worksheet thing that can help you sort of start this work on your own. I'm not going to read that part on this essay because it would be forever long. So I'm linking to it in the description below. It will take you to my website where you can utilize those resources. It doesn't cost anything. I'm not trying to like sell you my weight loss program or anything crazy like that. It's just a page on my website that you can go to, access for free. I just wanted to sort of have that information readily accessible. So if anything in this essay resonates with you and you want to sort of work on improving your relationship with like food and hunger and all of that kind of stuff, go check out that link. Okay, all of that being said, let's just do the goddamn essay. Jesus Christ. Welcome to the intro. A couple of things going in. First, this is not medical advice, nor can I guarantee that anything that worked for me will work for you. We are different people with different experiences, and it is beautiful and lovely that we can coexist. My experience is not yours, and if you do not see yourself represented in this story, then this story may not be for you, and I honor and validate that, and I truly wish you well. Second, I am going to be honest here. This writing, this video, this is your trigger warning, this is your content warning. We are going to be talking about disability and pain and eating disorders and all of that kind of stuff. So if you are not in a place to receive that or listen to that, be kind to yourself, be compassionate with yourself, come back when you're ready. But I'm just saying that ahead of time. And also, I just want to warn you that I am going to be more honest here than you are probably used to seeing me. And part of that is because I want to be direct about the challenges that I was facing and how truly, actually, for really hard it was, and how hard I had to work to get where I am in my recovery. And I'm sharing all of this because I want you to know that if you are struggling with similar things, you are allowed to want something different. You are allowed to work towards feeling better. The work is hard. It can feel difficult. It can feel impossible. But even when it feels insurmountable and impossible and difficult, I hope that you hear my story and it resonates. So yeah, with all of that being said, let us. There are nuances to what it is like to live in my neurodivergent brain. A vast network of truths and lies, black and white facts. And so a large part of the work I had to do involved deconstructing much of what I'd taught myself about reasonable functionality in my all or nothing thinking. Instead, I had to learn to navigate a more fluid, changeable way of being that works with both my ADHD and my autism. I have to go for a walk every day at 2 p.m. because 2 p.m. is my walking time, and if I don't walk at 2 p.m., then I've missed my walking window and I've failed to take a walk. Or perhaps even more broadly, if I don't go for a walk every single day, I'm a failure and I'm backsliding and I'm doing everything wrong and I might as well give up. This mentality showed and shows up a lot in my thinking around my eating disorder. I have to maintain a perfect meal plan structure because that is safe and okay, and if I don't, then I've failed and I've ruined the day. And so for weeks, months at a time even, I'd be fine. I'd eat from my set menu of breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and then something would happen. A friend would be in town and want to get dinner, or my husband would work late and plans would change, the structure would crack, and I would spiral. I talked a little bit about this in part 2, but part of the challenge was also that ADHD brains suck at consistency. Developing habits is extremely difficult for us as a population. So I needed structures that were rigid enough to provide support, but flexible enough that they wouldn't shatter the moment life happened, which is, a totally reasonable and not at all contradictory thing to build. One of the most frustrating parts about navigating food issues with neurodivergence is that a whole lot of therapists and doctors come to the table with absolutely no flexibility when it comes to understanding what it's like to experience sensory issues. I kept getting into what I started calling the salad dressing fight, and it would go something like this. A well-meaning clinician would say, Kate, it's important that you start to stretch your comfort zone when it comes to safe foods. The goal is to remember that all foods are safe and okay to eat. And I would say, yes, indeed. And then the clinician would say, okay, so then why are you avoiding salad dressing? And I would say, because salad dressing is fucking disgusting. And then the clinician would condescendingly say, Kate, come on. It's easy to be mistrustful of salad dressing because it can be high in calories. And then I would say, no, actually, I fucking hate salad dressing. This isn't an eating disorder thing. It's I do not want there to be sauce on my lettuce because if there is sauce on my lettuce, it is ruined and bad and I do not want to eat it. And then the clinician would say, see, that's restrictive eating disorder talk. And I would say, no, it's entirely different. And the clinician would say, explain how. And I would be like, it just is. The problem wasn't that they were wrong to worry about restriction. That's a valid concern. The problem was that most of the clinicians I encountered couldn't tell the difference between an eating disorder and the lived realities of my neurodivergent nervous system. And listen, I know in this case, the line is razor thin. It is true that we can mask disordered eating with rationales about sensory preferences or food sensitivities, but it is also true that lots of the wildly successful neurodivergent adults I know eat the same thing every day. Lots of them also have preferred dinner or takeout or coffee orders that they get because they know that they're safe and reliable. If they are feeding themselves and getting the proper nutrition, why does a medical practitioner care if it's coming from a vast menu of options or exclusively from the same meal every day? But that's disordered eating, and then around we go again. If there are no good foods nor bad foods, only foods to be eaten in moderation, why was I being forced to eat shit I hate in recovery because it was important for me to expand my comfort zone? I'm an ADHD woman nearing 40. I know what my comfort zone is. Here's where it gets really complicated. ARFID, avoided restrictive food intake disorder, is a recognized eating disorder characterized by avoiding foods based on sensory properties, lack of interest in eating, or a fear of adverse consequences. And a lot of neurodivergent people meet the criteria for ARFID. So when does I'm neurodivergent and have sensory issues with food become I have an eating disorder? And the answer is, frustratingly, it depends. If your sensory-based food restrictions are causing malnutrition, significant weight loss, an inability to participate in social situations, anxiety around what to eat, fear around consuming unsafe foods, or is just generally significantly impacting your quality of life, that's disordered eating. If you're eating the same 5 foods every day, but you're nutritionally sound, maintaining a healthy weight, taking a multivitamin, living your life, that might just be how you eat. But here's what made it so hard for me. I had both. I had legitimate sensory issues with food that had been there my entire life, and I had developed disordered eating patterns around those sensory issues. The salad dressing thing was just pure sensory aversion. It always had been. But the fact that I'd built rigid rules around it, that any deviation from my safe foods would trigger a binging and purging cycle, that was the eating disorder piggybacking on my neurodivergence. Untangling what behaviors were protective adaptations for my sensory system and which were disordered eating patterns that were actively harming me required a level of nuance that most practitioners just didn't have. They wanted clear categories. Either I was restricting because of an eating disorder, bad, needs to change, or I was restricting because of autism. Oh, fine, we'll accommodate. And honestly, a lot of them wanted to force me to eat regular anyway because it was easier clinically. But I was dealing with both simultaneously, and sometimes the same behavior could be either one, depending on the context and my mental state. It was so complicated. I needed practitioners who could hold that complexity, who could say, okay, the salad dressing aversion is sensory, and we're not going to challenge that, but the fact that you can only eat lettuce if it's in a specific bowl at the specific time and any variation sends you spiraling, that's the eating disorder, and we need to work on that. The work wasn't always about forcing myself to eat foods that genuinely caused me sensory distress. It was about building flexibility around the foods I could eat so that my world didn't collapse when my circumstances changed. Just start eating better. And literally all of this, everything that I just talked about, that was just the sensory element of food. It had nothing to do with actually eating it. The sensory stuff was hard enough on its own, but now I had to add in my struggles with my executive function and my time blindness. Over and over and over, I would hear, Kate, you're not sticking to your recovery plan, or Kate, it's eating disorder illegal to skip meals. Great, I wasn't doing it because I'm scared of gaining weight, Dr. Carlson. I just got caught up in learning about Brecht's writings about Nazi propaganda. A lot of practitioners don't get that. A lot of doctors hear that as like the evil, nefarious machinations of an eating disorder riddled brain. But I have always forgotten to eat. I have always gotten distracted. I frequently find myself choosing between a research rabbit hole or food. When they did believe me, when they finally accepted that I wasn't always restricting on purpose, their solution was always some version of just make it easier, just meal prep on Sundays, just keep healthy snacks around, just make better choices. Again, the familiar anger around my hatred of the word just would come up. Didn't they understand that just eating healthier wasn't just choosing a salad? It was going to the grocery store, which meant remembering to go to the grocery store, which meant making a list, which meant taking inventory of what I already had, which meant opening the fridge and seeing the rotting produce from last week's good intentions and feeling the shame spiral start. It was remembering to buy new things and then actually remembering I bought them before they went bad. It was stocking my fridge differently and breaking the automatic reach for processed comfort foods. It was seeing a recipe that looked good and then realizing I need to go to 3 different stores to get the ingredients, and then suddenly the whole thing felt impossible. Or I triumphantly returned from shopping only to be too tired to actually make the goddamn thing. It was the difference in effort between making something fresh, find the cutting board, is it clean, where are the good knives? Shit, I need to sharpen the knives. I should really sharpen the knives. Okay, I'm ordering a knife sharpener. Wait, what was I doing? Oh, right, I was cooking. What was I making? I need to look at the recipe again. Okay, I need to wash and chop these vegetables. Wait, the cutting board isn't clean. I need to wash the dishes first. The sink is full. I need to run the dishwasher, and there are clean dishes in the dishwasher. I should put those away first. Versus heating up something processed, microwave for 3 minutes, done. And all of that required executive functioning I frequently did not have. When you tell someone with ADHD to just eat better, you're not asking them to just make one choice. You are asking them to execute a complex multi-step project that requires planning, memory, task initiation, task switching, and follow-through, all of which are the exact things ADHD makes really difficult, if not nearly impossible, and to do it multiple times a day, every day, forever, until you die. Eventually, finally, I found a therapist who could handle both eating disorder behaviors alongside neurodivergence. But even for her, it was a learning experience. She was honest about it, about having to develop new ways of discussing and looking into things, because I am a master intellectualizer, and the usual somatic approaches had to be adapted significantly to work for my brain. Together, we started building scaffolds, not structures that would work for everyone, but structures that would work for me. And this required me to get really fucking honest about who I am and what I actually need, not who I thought I should be or what I thought normal, regular people needed. I've found that a creatively motivating activity where I get to make up a little story actually helps me feel things better, because I'm able to take in an inventory as a writer. As me, as Kate, I struggle to know what I'm feeling. As writer Kate, it is my job as a writer to examine what I'm feeling in order to accurately portray it on the page. So I started narrating my own experiences like I was writing a character study. What would the camera see? What were my micro expressions? What were my physical tells? It's dorky as hell, but it worked. In my particular case, it now started as a little exercise, and now I have a decent start in a murder mystery series about a detective who can't feel anything. So, unless that was a hilarious visual humor joke that you wouldn't get in the essay. You're welcome. Okay, anyway. Despite the challenges of consistency and sticking to habits, I built stopping points into my day. Little checkpoints where I'd have to pause and ask myself questions. Not, am I hungry? Because we've established that's kind of useless information for me. But I would ask myself, when did I last eat? Have I had water? What time is it? That kind of thing. External data points I could actually work with. They don't happen on a strict schedule, and I have external reminders set on my calendar and my phone to check in, and sometimes I still forget. This very day, this very afternoon, I skipped my afternoon check-in because I was lost in the sauce writing this and recording this video. I've created flexible meal structures that have guardrails but not walls. So I eat something when I wake up versus breakfast must be eaten at 10 a.m. I have a protein and a carb for lunch, not I have this exact sandwich at the exact same time every day. Enough structure to keep me from spiraling, but enough flexibility that life can happen without destroying everything. I've gotten interested in nutrients and how different nutrients affect the rest of my day. And it turns out that for me, fat is wildly necessary and helps me feel satiated in a safe way, not in a panicky binge way. So now I make my coffee with heavy cream and I eat my breakfast muffin with a scoop of peanut butter. And also, once again, because I promised you honesty, dear reader, dear listener, full disclosure, there was a large part of this process where I didn't have a therapist. I should have, absolutely, and it was probably really dumb and unsafe for me not to. In my case, it was a whole thing with like moving and insurance and being in one state and living in another. It was like a whole fucking thing. But so in my case, I defaulted to what I know, which was delving into concepts from a research standpoint. I started doing a lot of like workbooks and journaling and self-led internal family systems parts work, which it's true that IFS is designed to be done on one's own, but I think I would have benefited from more support on the beginning part of it, if that makes sense. Many of you have asked me what exactly I do. What are my systems? What's my meal plan? What structures did I build? And here's the thing, I'm not going to tell you. Not because I'm girl boss gatekeeping or being coy, nor do I have anything to tell you. You could pre-order my book if you wanted, but other than that. But because my scaffolds are built specifically for me and my lived experiences, what it's like to live with my disability, my chronic pain in my specific soup brain, it's not helpful for me to tell you to find a Shakespeare character that feels like the embodied manifestation of anxiety in order to process fear when you're not already an expert in Shakespeare. It's not useful for you to know that I have a specific internal dialogue with a part of myself I call the magician, who helps me navigate binge urges when your parts work, your IFS work might show up completely differently. It is not useful for me to direct you to books about magic tricks as a relief from binge urges because you're probably fun and cool at parties. What I can do is tell you a little bit about the questions I ask myself and the stopping points that I've built in that help me navigate binging and my all or nothing thinking around exercise and food. When I feel the urge to binge, I pause. And I cannot stress this enough. This alone, this pause took me months of practice to be even able to do. And I asked myself, when did I last eat? What did I eat? Was it enough? What was I doing right before this urge hit? What would eating right now give me? This allows me to extrapolate external data, context clues, getting at an actual need. And sometimes the answer is I'm actually hungry because I just went for a 3-mile hike and I need food. Sometimes it's I'm bored and I want stimulation. Sometimes it's I'm anxious and I want to self-soothe. And sometimes it's I don't fucking know. I cannot tell, but I know that the void is calling. And all of those are still useful pieces of information, even the last one. For all or nothing thinking around exercise and movement, I built in what I call minimum viable effort checkpoints. Movement is necessary for me to continue my progress, to manage my chronic pain, but sometimes I can't necessarily do that, whether because of scheduling or hyperfocus or because of the chronic pain and depression that I'm still living with. Rather than punish myself, I once again built a system around failure. Sometimes I wasn't going to be able to move. Okay, so what if instead of punishing myself and resigning myself to be a fuck up, I did my best to be intentional and active in the same small, infinitesimal way I'd been working on in therapy? On days when I can't do my full walk or workout, what's the smallest thing I can do that still counts? Sometimes it's stretching for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's walking to the mailbox. The goal isn't to trick myself into doing more, it's to break the binary of perfect adherence or complete failure, and to simultaneously build trust towards myself. I may not be perfect. I may get hyper-focused and forget to go on a walk, but I'm not a failure in those moments anymore. Personally, I've set the goal to try intentionally move my body for at least 20 minutes a day. And that's usually super easy to get away with because I love going for walks with Bailey. But sometimes I'm doing like fancy celebrity shit, like performing on cruises or doing conventions. And on those days, I might do a yoga video in my room or just like walk to an interesting coffee shop or something. It doesn't have to be like a hard run or lifting weights. It's just, did I move today? That is my minimum viable effort checkpoint. And if I can't do that, that is okay too. Sometimes rest is the minimally viable effort that I can expend. Sometimes I am injured. Sometimes I'm just not okay and I can't get out of bed. If that is the minimally viable effort that I have to give that day, that still fucking counts. And also, this is just kind of a fun fact, but since I graduated from physical therapy, I literally have not set foot in a gym. I realized that going to a place to do a thing is a series of just so many infinitesimally small and annoying tasks that I just kind of said, fuck it. Taking a change of clothes and showering and packing clean clothes and figuring out what to do and the hopeless like gym wander, waiting for the good machine and the noise and the lights and the people and the dad rock music and remembering to take your shit out of your car and wash it and then it's all mildewy and gross. I chose to opt out. I have workout stuff at home. I use that. Walking is free. For food planning around executive function challenges, I use visual systems. My fridge is now organized in a specific way. I have a running menu of meal components, not specific meals. I set alarms, not just for meal times, but for like, have you thought about food today reminders. Privilege moment. I also have tried and tested a lot of different like pre-portioned grab and go things to build a roster of the ones that I keep stocked in my house consistently. And that helps immensely because I have things that I know are good and I don't have to think about. It's not an option for everyone, but I have them linked on my website if you want to go click the link and look at the ones that I like. So those are my scaffolds. Yours will look different because you are different. Your experience is different than mine. The work is figuring out exactly who you are, what you actually need, and what actually works for your specific constellation of brain weirdness. Not what works for neurotypical people, not what the eating disorder treatment manual says should work, what actually functionally keeps you moving forward on your progress journey. I'm still building these scaffolds. Some days they hold and some days they don't. Some days I follow my structures perfectly and I still wind up binging. Some days I completely abandon my plans and I feel totally fine. Recovery isn't about building a perfect system. It's about building a system that can flex and adapt and occasionally fail without taking you down with it. And that work, the work of truly understanding yourself well enough to build supports that actually support you, that is some of the hardest and most important work there is. In the last part of whatever the fuck this has turned into, I'm going to talk about the last component piece to my treatment puzzle, my decision to use GLP-1s and what I've learned having lost 100 pounds. So like I said earlier, don't forget that I'm also going to list like those question resources and stuff down on my website. I've also got like the list of snacks on my website. So if you want to check that out, you can. But for this week, thank you so much for listening and I'll see you one last time for next week. Okay, bye.